Hello and welcome back after your breakout sessions. I understand you have already had a long day. Maybe just kind of stretch once so we don't forget that we've got a body. It does make a difference, doesn't it? Well, with this, I'm very happy to welcome you to our last bit of today and introduce to you our keynote speaker who's going to talk about impact investment at a crossroads. He's the co-founder of Tonique, which we already heard about today, and KL Felicitas Foundation, also the chairman of the board for impact assets. He has about 20 years experience as a senior technology executive in Silicon Valley and in senior management positions. He's founded numerous organizations to foster social impact, and as an impact investor, he believes that the real meaning of wealth is to make a positive contribution to humanity and the planet. Please welcome very warmly with me, Charly Kleissner.
Thank you so much, Katharina, for the kind introduction. And thank you, Impact Hub, for designing this beautiful event in a very beautiful space. And thanks for the sponsors and all of you who have shown up to listen to me as the last keynote speaker on the way to a beautiful dinner. And thanks to the online audience, I understand we have many, many people looking online, so that's also very exciting to be able to do that. I'm excited to be here today because it's like the 10-year anniversary of an event that I was able to participate 10 years ago. And on one level, a lot of things changed. On a different level, not that many things changed. As Angelika pointed out at the beginning of this conference, we now need to really challenge the status quo. We cannot just extrapolate out from the last 10 years and say, well, the next 10 years are going to incrementally improve. My discussion today will be to convince you that that's not a viable strategy anymore for humanity to thrive. And we have to do that in a way, as Alexis pointed out in the morning, that builds trust, collaboration, and with courage, the theme of our Impact Days today. My remarks are going to be, the topic is impact investing and really humanity at the crossroads, and my personal reflections and a call to action in the end. The way that I'm structuring my talk tonight is that I first explain what the crossroads are, what are the two roads that we can choose to go forward with. Secondarily, I want to share with you how I think we got to this fork in the road. And thirdly, I will share with you my opinions about how to move forward on the right road. We are at the beginning of an unprecedented global transformation where humanity needs to figure out how to enable 10 billion people to live a decent, meaningful life on a planet with limited resources. And our economic system and financial system pretends that that's possible while maintaining exponential growth. Maybe you don't want to be an economist of today in order to understand that that's not possible. And so we need to really challenge the fundamental assumptions of a system, the financial system and economic system, that mainly serves the rich, that mainly serves itself, to see how we can change it to serve humanity and the planet. I feel like we're in for a time of radical change in the next few years. In a time of radical change, it is important to enhance the existing systems and not let them collapse uncontrollably, as that would also lead to disaster, while we enable the new system to emerge. Not one or the other, actually both. And the ESG movement and the deep impact movement are a great example of one enhancing the existing system and the other one working on replacing the existing system with a new one that is designed differently, that takes social and environmental impact at its core. We are at a crossroad right now. So the first road continues on the path of business as usual. This road actually cements the existing power structures in place. It amplifies them. It doesn't take away from them. It aggravates inequality and social injustice, not alleviates it. And it does not normally allow the new system to emerge, which we need to enable to do that. So the second road actively prepares for major systemic change that was mentioned also today in this conference, while making sure that the old system does not uncontrollably collapse. It allows for the emergence of the regenerative financial and economic system serving us, humanity, and the planet. This road is much more uncertain, make no mistake, and yet filled with infinite possibilities. So how did we get here? About 4 years ago, I started talking at a conference in Korea about deep impact vis-à-vis ESG. I saw the ESG train coming, and it actually arrived with a roar, and it's good that it did. Like I just said in my initial remarks, it's important to improve the existing system, but we cannot mistake that effort in actually changing our system to take care of the big, wicked problems like social injustice, inequality, runaway climate change. For that, it is not suited to do that. ESG is better than non-ESG, for sure. If your values allow you to invest in weapons, which is a very lucrative investment these days, right, then I bet that you would get more financial return if you invest in a weapons manufacturer that has a bigger ESG score than one that doesn't. But you see what the problem is, right? It's actually within a sector, it differentiates between green steel and having a diversified board for weapons manufacturers, and not green steel and having an old core board. And I, for one, with my values, would not be able to invest knowingly in any weapons manufacturer. So if you actually care about your values, and you do, and most of us have values, then I assume that you don't want to invest in an ESG fund that pulls in whatever is against your values, including the oil and gas industry. If you believe that they should not be continue to be funded as they are or subsidized, then why would you support them as part of an ESG fund? So the minimum that you would have to do if you're an ESG investor is to make sure that a negative screen is applied on top of ESG to make sure that you don't invest in a fund that pulls in things that are counter to your purpose in your life and your values. Even if all the money in the world would move to ESG, 120 trillion, the social injustice would actually be bigger, and inequality. Why is that? People ask me. Well, if we don't change the financial system that's designed to make the rich richer, and all the private equity funds actually will invest in the transformation to the new energy and renewables. But notice who benefits from that if we don't change from a shareholder economy to a stakeholder economy. Only the rich, only the investors, right? And that's why even if we step on the gas on some of the environmental challenges that we have in the old financial system, the social structure and fabric will break down. So why is it? Let me talk a little bit about systems and then move on. Because I have a PhD in computer science, and I'm trained in holistic thinking, not reductionist thinking. And systems, when they get under enough pressure, they will react. And because mostly our own economic system, that makes it much cheaper to extract oil and gas than leaving it in the ground, that's what's happening. It's not the bad companies, the bad managers. The system rewards right now that industry with outsized profits. The side effect of this, of course, is that the biosphere, the system of our planet, is reacting with climate change. And if we don't get our act together, the system will not be able to get into a new equilibrium that's compatible with decent living conditions with all sentient beings on a finitely resourced planet. Same is true for inequality. The social unrest that you see all over the world is a direct consequence of the inequality that our economic system injects into our societies. So unless we change it, the societies will react. They're a system, and particularly the young people will not be able to self-actualize with a decent life in their lifetimes. So let me make it a little bit more personal and share my story in the last 20 years, looking back how we got to here, and then I'm going to project out to the future what has to be done. When Lisa and I started our impact investing journey about 20 years ago, twice 10 years, we initially started supporting social entrepreneurs. And we noticed that a lot of social entrepreneurs are just treating the symptoms of the underlying causes. And so we enhanced our desire to support social entrepreneurs who actually deal with the root causes of the systems that don't serve us anymore. And then we started understanding how philanthropy and capitalism does not support the progression of humanity to a happy place. So we made it a goal of ours to contribute to the change of the financial system, as I just pointed out, in order to make it different and serve us and humanity. And then, about 4 years ago, we had to admit that it doesn't work. We know what to do. We know the principles of what we need to redesign our systems for. Circularity, resiliency, regenerative regionality, and social justice, and what have you. So why don't we do it? The only answer that I can give to that is that our level of awareness and consciousness is not on the level where we have the courage and the conviction to actually do that. Our brains are such powerful instruments that they pretend, make us feel and think like we are special. They make us feel and think like we have the authority to control nature and the universe and other tribes. But that is an illusion. Even if you're not going down into the consciousness side, if you intellectually debate what I just said, it doesn't make sense that we are outside of nature, yet we behave that way. So unless we get an upgrade on that one, and I talk about what I think might happen, I'm actually quite pessimistic that we will be able to elect the politicians that get it because they represent our collective consciousness, that we need to do that. I'm quite pessimistic that AI and modern technology would be used for good and for positive impact, and yet I have hope. But before I talk about the hope, I have to acknowledge the crisis that we're in. And because it made me think in the last couple of years a lot about where are we on this consciousness journey, right? So we had two major crises, a pandemic that's still going on, war that's still going on, and it is true that both of these major disruptive events have elevated the consciousness and awareness to a certain extent, which is great. But I have two questions. Number one, will it take these awful disruptions that impact millions of people with lots of deaths in order to wake us up? Number one. And then it doesn't wake us up all the way to demand what I just said, which is the second question, which is more challenging in my opinion, and that's will it take an even bigger disruption in order to wake us up to the point that we actually change how we conduct human societies on this planet? Well, I'm cautiously optimistic on that because I see as a counterpoint, so this made me kind of pessimistic when I wrote the article that I'm publishing right now that I'm referring to. And I got into a little funk for 2 days, saying, boy, this is a bad conclusion. But then I talked to many people, and they reminded me, including many of you in here, about the beauty of emergence, of actually the work that so many millions of people and so many people who care are doing. I don't think that the change will come top-down. I think the change will come as an emergence bottom-up, decentralized and not controlled by anybody. And that is my hope. I'm also hoping, I tell you a story about, I just came back from Oslo, and I participated in a beautiful festival of beautiful people, all caring about what I just talked about. And I was asked to lead an intergenerational panel about deep questions, right? Deep impact questions. And somebody introduced me to the youth leader of Extinction Rebellion of Norway, beautiful human being, but also civil disobedience, right? And it's interesting that my generation sometimes is very uncomfortable around that youth, around the youth that rightly challenges us to think differently. And not just incrementally, no. We need to think differently on a fundamental level. When I think, I'm old enough to remember as a child the first generation of female activists, and they had to pretend to be men. The first generation of female activists was not nice, right? And I just hope that we can get the first generation of climate activists to the second generation faster so that we can collaborate on actually doing something meaningful all the way down from the nation states to the individual behavior and the behavior of companies and the financial system. So, okay, here we go. So where do we go from here? My last point. What does it mean for us, for you, for me, for us, for companies? Well, so I'm hopeful on a number of areas that I'm actively participating in and helping to move things forward. One is the emergence of beautiful circles of people who care and get together in circles, one of the most archetypal form of communication of humanity, when you sit around in circle and you discuss meaningful activities. I was privileged to start the Deep Impact Circles with the Tonic community, which I've co-founded, 12 years ago now. And there, we go into the very deep topics about how do we as impact investors, for instance, benefit from the existing system? How do we contribute to the existing system? What's enough for us? How do we move our investments from extractive to regenerative? And it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do because the system is rigged against that, right? And yet we need to push. But the more circles that push, the more distributed energy we get that's pointing in the right direction of actually fixing what we caused in the first place. Impact management, always a hairy topic and a topic of big activities. We just started in Oslo an effort between many different impact investors, deep impact investors, to include systemic change into the management, into the methodologies of the impact management methodology as a whole, right? And we're using beautiful frameworks like John Fullerton's regenerative capitalism, or Kate Raworth's donut economy, or Otto Scharmer's OS 4.0 framework, right? That we use to prove that investments actually have a systemic change component in it. And we need to add the consciousness to that it's done with a level of consciousness that's not anthropocentric, it's not human-centric. It goes beyond your brain, your heart, it goes with the soul, right? Because if you are an impact investor who just invests brainy, well, good for you, a nice intellectual exercise, but you will not get any deep, right? because the brain doesn't really understand how the world works. Or if you only invest with your heart, you will most likely lose all your money because compassionate heart and all that, wonderful. But then you don't have anything else to invest anymore, right? And so I think if you reference your soul or whatever you call that, that's beyond your ego and beyond your own lifetime, that's actually a good thing to do. In the words of John Fullerton, we need to change finance, not finance change, right? We need to change finance, not finance change. Regionality is a natural component of sustainability and regeneration. My wife is part Hawaiian, and we run an accelerator in Hawaii, and it was really interesting to see how the consciousness on an island state improved in the last 2 years, of course triggered by the awful nature of the global supply chains for food, where 85% of the food in Hawaii is imported, including 60% of the fish. Now, however, people understand that. And the beautiful entrepreneurs that we work with in regenerative agriculture, they also get the financing now, we get the distribution channels, and the politicians get it because they can look like heroes to support our entrepreneurs to deliver a more regional economy. I'm honored and privileged to have been able to work myself here in Austria a little bit over the last couple of years. Since I'm dual citizen, they allowed me to travel back and forth. And I was able to help Impact Hub Tirol get off the ground. And I'm just so inspired by the young leadership there and help them to design programs that really make a difference in the region and beyond. And of course, the Impact Hub Network is of big help there. I'm privileged to participate in an effort to create the first impact bank in Austria. Austria deserves an impact bank, just like the Germans do, and the French do, and the Swiss do, and the Triodos in the Netherlands, and yet we don't have one yet. Now, that's a difficult process here in Austria because the regulatory framework is not the simplest. But my partner in crime, Johannes Ortner, he's here. Where is he? Oh, here. He knows he's a banker, I'm not. So we're a dynamic duo to get this off the ground. If you're actually interested in that, we do a little event in Radetzky 3 at 6, so drop by if you want to know more about that. Now, the last 2 points I want to make is technology and research. So first, technology. I'm a technologist, and the new technologies like blockchain and artificial intelligence are very, very, very powerful. And they can and are being used to subtly and not so subtly manipulate our behavior. They manipulate our behavior to the point where they are so powerful that they manipulate our behavior in order for whom we vote for, against our will, because they're so targeted, right? I think I need to build bridges between the impact world and the technology world because I understand technology. I know how to do AI. I know how to do blockchain. I know where it's useful. And yet all the impact people are scared about technology, and rightly so. But instead of being scared, we should understand what it's useful for and then employ it. I was just in Davos in Switzerland, and the Swiss government actually is making, decentralized finance a major effort within Switzerland, not surprisingly, because they know that they can make a lot of money from the new financial world that's developing right now. I wish I could have the same discussions here in Austria, but I can't. There's no appetite for risk, there's no appetite for entrepreneurism. Maybe that's going to change, maybe not. I'm a global citizen and we can do something in Switzerland and all that, but it's a little sad, is it not, that we can't do these things here? In any case, there's new forms of government that we're experimenting with, tokenization of impact, NFTing impact, right? All these modern concepts, when you have a digital representation of impact, then you can do all these things, not just cryptocurrencies, which I could never invest in, because it's pure speculation. And I cannot invest in pure speculation. That's against my values. On top of that, they use way too much energy, But the next iteration actually is moving beyond that. So the last piece maybe that I want to mention is research, right? Because the investment world is running on what they call the modern portfolio theory, which has nothing to do with modern. It was invented by a guy, Markowitz, 74 years ago, and it just talks about the correlation and causality between financial risk and return. And he never claimed that it would be useful for systemic change. He never did. And yet people are confusing that and telling us, the whole financial sector, that that is the theory that we should apply. And you know what's going to happen when the next crash happens, like in 2008 and 2009? The whole asset classes are going to go down together because they're all correlated when there's systemic change issues. When Lisa and I analyzed our portfolio in 2008 and 2009, indeed, we found, not surprisingly to us, that the deep impact investments that we did not go down. They stayed up because they were not related to the financial crisis, right? And so we need to actually help design coalitions that collect massive data sets of impact and then use modern technology of learning algorithms to figure out if impact risk and return, or how impact risk and return is correlated or not to financial risk and return. Beautiful efforts going on there, mostly from professors who are not tenured, because otherwise they run into the usual issues of, well, that's not a research topic that actually mainstream supports, but there's enough people out there that do that now. So, and we need to go beyond our own echo chambers. We talked about bias up here before, right? And we need to question our own biases, myself included, about whom we work with and how, and all of that in order to move forward. So I'm getting to the end of my remarks with a call to action. Nice to see you. You see, we still have some energy. I hear laughter. So I'm going to do the call to action. Okay. So a lot of things are happening, but they're not happening fast enough and not big enough and don't get the visibility. We all need to do that. We need to commit to having the courage to actually feature the things that I talked about and not say, well, this is a little thing going on. It's not. It's our survival that's at stake. It's time for the deep impact community to get together and organize around that. And I'm going to end on a personal note. So the impermanence of my own life is actually quite present because I almost died 3 years ago of a very, very bad type of cancer. And obviously I survived and I thrive now. That's good. I'm healed, so that's also good. And so there's a reason for that. But I had a very, practicing dying is a very cleansing effort and a very focusing effort because it allowed me to go deep in what I now articulate as deep impact and my own contribution to that. There's urgency to that. I feel the urgency not just because of my own impermanence, but also because our daughter had a grandson. And he is 10 months old, beautiful human being, doesn't know all the stories that we tell ourselves about money and about all of that. And that gives me the conviction and the inner strength together with my mindfulness practice to actually take the second road. And I invite you all to take the second road, and in the words of Otto Scharmer, let's lead from the future as it emerges. Thank you.
Charly, thank you. I do have one question, though, even though I need to kind of continue with our program. But you just mentioned you're a 10-year-old 10-month-old grandchild. Is it a son or?
A son.
Ah, there you go. And you also mentioned to me before that your mom is now 94. So that's quite an interesting span of life that you have in your private life. And then when we look at your work life, you also have this really interesting span between, trying to evolve humanity's consciousness, and on the other hand, hard finance. And if you can just give me like a one-syllable answer now.
Okay.
Like, what is the most essential for you that you can actually live this span, that you can build this bridge between those two worlds?
Well, I'm privileged to have a mother that's 94 years old and preparing for her death in a beautiful way. and reflecting on the meaning of her life. And then I see the little boy, right, and everything in front of him. And it makes me reflect on my own consciousness, right, and what's happening at the beginning and at the end. And it's a beautiful reminder, you know, that when you get the chance to die consciously, like I almost did, then you can review your life. And so it was actually, I felt the most gratitude for having been so privileged to lead a really beautiful life. And that gratitude was the most important emotion in how to get over that. And that gratitude is actually what I feel when I look at the little guy and my beautiful old mother whose face is, you know, shining in preparation for the transition.
Gratitude we take on in our efforts to build bridges. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Charly Kleissner, thank you.
Thank you.
And with this gratitude, I'm also grateful for you to be here now. And we have one final bit where we want to dive a bit deeper into what really matters to us and what really drives us. And for this, I ask on stage our final speaker of the day. He's a full professor of theological ethics and also the director of the Institute of Social Ethics at the University of Luzern. Please welcome with me Peter Kirchschläger. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for dedicating some time to ethical reflection. And let's start with the following question. And I would like to invite you to write that down on Slido. Please just use one word, not explaining that for 2 pages or so. What is your most important value? What is the most important value for you? And please just pick one. I will give you some time for that, and then it should be put on the screen which values you have chosen. So we have family, truth, stillness, love, meaningfulness, help, harmony, and that's the big one, freedom. Equality, humbleness, honor, integrity, connection, love is becoming bigger. Do you see any economic values? Not really. So we see that there's a difference between economic values and moral, ethical values, and you see what is more important to you. There's also a difference between values and principles. What do I mean by that? So take, for example, the principle of human dignity. The philosopher Appia defined it as everybody matters. So human dignity is just about that every human being matters. I would add that it's especially about this principle of human dignity is especially about differentiating between an object like this pen and a human which cannot be treated as an object. We can attribute an economic value to this pen. So it's a pen from the University of Lucerne, 100 euros. And when I do that, you probably wouldn't care. I mean, if this pen, which of course is with quality, doesn't get broken, it's not even an issue from a sustainability point of view, because the resources weren't thrown away. If I do the same thing, and please excuse this drastic example, if I do the same thing with a human baby, so throw it on the floor, you would have good reasons to kick me out of this place. This is what human dignity is about. This difference between material objects and humans. This is just an example what ethical reflection can help us to sharpen our ideas. And I would like to invite you to dedicate more time, more space in your organizations for ethical debate, for ethical reflection, for ethical discussion. Discussion about purpose, about meaning, about what are the most important values for you, for me, and how do they relate with the values of your organization? Is there any incoherence? Are they coherent? Are they aligned? Are the difference which makes things then even more interesting? If you ask yourself, why should I do this? Well, first, because it can help you to sharpen your business case. It can sharpen your idea, your understanding of the purpose you are trying to serve with your business activity. But in front of all, you would take humans seriously as what humans are. Why? Because the capability to think about these things, to think about the question, what is the most important value for me, is unique to humans. It's part of the uniqueness of humans. So we usually don't think that dogs reflect upon what they should do in order to do the right thing, or they find out themselves what is the right thing. I'm not saying that dogs are not morally relevant. Of course they are. And I would also say that they can act morally in a right way. But that they find it out themselves is, let's say, within the limits of human reason. Nowadays, status of results of research, we would think that this is a unique characteristic of humans. Part of that unique characteristic of humans to be able to think about these questions is that we can handle, and now that's the most complex part of my talk, we can handle the rule transcending uniqueness of the concrete. The rule transcending uniqueness of the concrete. In other words, ethics goes beyond rules. Ethics goes beyond norms. Ethics goes beyond principles. Ethics goes beyond values. Why I would say that? Because as humans, we have the responsibility that we have to, in a concrete situation, in a concrete encounter with concrete humans, we have to find out in that concrete situation what is the right thing to do. Give me the opportunity to illustrate that with an example. Imagine you live in the time of the Nazi regime, and you give shelter to a Jewish family, and the Nazis knock at your door and ask you, do you give shelter to a Jewish family? If you tell the truth, you send these people to be killed. If you're not telling the truth, you are lying. It's obvious what is the right thing to do in that concrete situation, in that concrete context, in this concrete encounter with concrete humans. You have to lie in order to save these humans. Now, if you would follow blindly some rules or some principles or some norms, you wouldn't do the right thing in that concrete situation. And humans are able to handle that. So I would like to invite you to dedicate more time, more space in your organization for ethical reflection, for ethical debate, for ethical discussion, also because while doing so, you will become more effective, you will have more impact. Why would I argue for that? Well, imagine the situation, someone is always lying. Do you really like to listen to such a person? And of course, there's a certain kind of analogy to looking at studies showing the trust people have in decision makers of business and of politics nowadays. So what I'm trying to say is ethical leadership, ethical entrepreneurship, ethical investing is more effective and will have more impact. So let me close by inviting you to dedicate as much time as you can on aligning the ethical compass of your organization and your own ethical compass. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Peter, for this beautiful end of today and for this ethical reflection that we're going to take with us for tonight into the dinner. Thank you so much. Well, looking at this bubble of words, I think these are beautiful words to open our evening with: curiosity, love, hope, meaningfulness, connectedness, time, truth. I think Peter gave us a perfect segue into tonight's dinner reception that we are now inviting you to. So we will invite you to our impact dinner, which is happening in the Zeremoniensaal. So basically, if you go out to the left and then just go straight on there. And maybe, you know, you've heard a lot today, and sometimes it really helps to let these things sink by discussing them with someone and just seeing what is it that really stuck with you today? What is it that touched you? What is it that surprised you? What is it that maybe irritated you, or maybe something that made you laugh? And try again to be a bit daring and maybe go for someone that you don't know yet. Look out for someone who's maybe, I don't know, let's say wearing the same color of shirt. That's an easy one. And just have this one short conversation with that person. What is it that touched you the most today? And with this, we invite you to our Impact Dinner presented by Impact Hub and Mercer. Wish you a beautiful evening. Enjoy your conversations and digesting everything that you've heard today. And we see you again, hopefully tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Have a great evening. Good night.